What if you were reincarnated and could go and visit the gravestone of your previous life? We are about to learn the mysterious reincarnation story of the Pollock twins. The father, John Pollock, was born in Bristol in 1920, raised in the Church of England before converting to Catholicism. Florence Pollock grew up as a member of the Salvation Army and became Catholic upon marrying John. Despite his Christian faith, John also believed strongly in reincarnation, which he encountered at the age of 9 in a book. John later told interviewers at night he would pray to God for evidence of reincarnation, proving himself right and the priests wrong. Pollocks left the church in the 1960s. Joanna Pollock was born in 1946, was the couple's third child and first daughter. In 1951, following a move to Hexham, their second daughter, Jacqueline, would be born. The parents were preoccupied with a grocery and milk delivery business, so the girls were mostly raised by a maternal grandmother, and they were inseparable. Joanna was like a mother to Jacqueline, and the little girl readily accepted her. They would wear costumes and make up plays. Joanna had a premonition she would never grow up, often saying, "I will never be a lady." They loved to comb each other's hair, and they also combed their father's. At the age of 3, Jacqueline fell into a bucket on accident that caused a small gash on her forehead over her right eye near the root of her nose. This formed a permanent scar that was slightly depressed and was very visible in the cold winter. Jacqueline had a roundish, dark birthmark on the left side of her waist. In May 1957, Joanna was aged 11 and Jacqueline was 6. On the morning of May 5th, they were struck by a car and killed while walking to church with a friend. The driver was a local woman who, in despair, being forcibly separated from her own children, decided to commit suicide by what she thought were lethal quantities of aspirin and phenobarbital. Witnesses saw her driving erratically, hitting the children who could not escape because of the wall on the other side of the sidewalk, and the impact tossed them into the air. They were both killed instantly. The incident made headlines throughout Britain. Their parents were devastated, but while Florence tried to avoid thinking about the girls, John preferred to keep them in his thoughts. On the day of the accident, he experienced a vision of them in heaven. Then he sensed the presence of their spirit on the top room of the house, and he took to spending time there in order to be close to them. He later said he felt the girls' deaths had been a punishment for God for having prayed for reincarnation. But he also felt that his prayer would be answered by his daughters being reborn into the family. Florence objected to this notion, and for a time the dispute threatened their marriage. Soon after, Florence became pregnant again, and John was convinced that Joanna and Jacqueline were about to reincarnate into the family as twins. Florence again rejected this belief, as her doctor predicted a single birth based on the palpitation and the heartbeat. There was no history of twins in either parent's family. However, on October 4th, 1958, twins were born. The girls were named Jillian and Jennifer had a birthmark that looked like Jacqueline's scar, and the second birthmark in the same place as Jacqueline's birthmark. Jillian and Jennifer made several statements and recognitions relating to Joanna and Jacqueline between the ages of 3 and 7. When the twins were about 3, the parents brought out toys that belonged to the dead girls, which had been boxed and stored in the attic. Jillian claimed that the doll had belonged to Joanna, and Jennifer claimed that the one had belonged to Jacqueline. They both said the dolls had been gifts from Santa Claus, as they had been for Joanna and Jacqueline. When Jillian saw a toy clothes wringer that had also been a Santa Claus present to Joanna, she said, "There's my toy wringer," adding that Santa brought it. Young The young children frequently quarrel over possession of a toy, but the parents observed that this did not happen here. Florence Pollock occasionally overheard Jillian and Jennifer discussing the details of the accident. Once she came across Jillian cradling Jennifer's head, saying, "The blood's coming out of your eyes. That was where the car hit you." John Pollock recalled when he identified the bodies, Jacqueline's head was bandaged above the eyes. Jillian once pointed to Jennifer's forehead birthmark and said, "That is the mark Jennifer got when she fell on the bucket." The Pollocks moved away from Hexham when the twins were about 9 months old. When they were all 4, the family visited Hexham again for the first time. As they walked around the park, but things were not in sight, Jillian and Jennifer said they wanted to go across the street to the park in swings, clearly knowing the way. When the girls complained about the lunch they were having at home, their mother said they could have had lunch at school, and they answered, "We've done that before." This was not true of Jillian and Jennifer, but it was true of Joanna and Jacqueline. At the time of their deaths, Jacqueline was still learning to write, and her teacher was concerned that she was still holding the pencil upright in her fist and suggested to the parents that they correct the habit by slapping her hand. When Jillian and Jennifer began to write at the age of 4, Jillian immediately held the pencil properly while Jennifer held it upright in her fist. She only started holding it properly at the age of 7, and even as an adult would sometimes revert to the fist grip. As the twins grew older, their past life memories faded. During the early years, John Pollock refrained from referring to their statements about what they remembered, nor did he discuss with them his beliefs in reincarnation, which they only learned about at age 13. They went on to live normal lives. Well, this is the point in the video where it's time to consult the tarot cards. So what I'm going to do is prepare a series of questions, and the questions with tarot are everything. So the first question that I'm going to ask is, are Jillian and Jennifer reincarnated from Joanna and Jacqueline? And I'm going to pull a couple of cards from the Universal Weight deck. The interesting thing about the tarot is it will give you signs and symbols, and it's kind of like solving a mystery when you read the tarot. And so what we have here is a wheel. In most traditions, a wheel is a cycle. A wheel is a cycle, the cycle of birth and re-death. So the wheel can literally mean the cycle of death and rebirth. So that is the very first card that was pulled, is the wheel. And that would support the reincarnation theory. However, I like to always pull a second card in order to validate or get extra information about the first card. So we have the Fool here, and we have stepping off a cliff, and this is about newness. This is also a card about 0, and 0 is another cycle number, okay? The 0. And the Fool, 2 O's. The 2 girls, OO. And card 0, recycled. And the cycle. Going to Spirit, coming back. What do you think? And then we'll ask. I always like to ask kind of a general question. What do we have to know about these girls who passed away? Did they make the decision to come back? Was it Joanna and Jacqueline's decision to come back into these other girls' bodies or reincarnate? King of Swords. This could be a male figure who had a strong influence on them coming back. So it could be the sheer desire of the father figure could have had an influence on them coming back. This is the 5 of Wands, which is a card from the Spirit. Wands are about the spirit and the future. Here's the car crash, the tower, the accident, Interestingly enough, both the girls were flying, and I don't mean that in a humorous way, but the car hit them and they were airborne. Well, here we have 2 airborne people. This represents literally the crash. Cards are explaining that. And then we have the 4 of Swords. So we have a brief period of rest on the other side, the 4 of Swords. Now in the normal tarot card, that is somebody laying down with like an armor on top of them, and it's the card of rest. So they had a slight rest before coming back. This is about choices. So if we would wonder, did they have a choice? So there's someone providing guidance to them, but ultimately they still had a choice. When they were up in the clouds, they still had a choice. So there was an amount or a factor of free will for them coming back. So now we'll ask the cards, the women that are Jillian and Jennifer, is there anything that we have to know about as adults? Is there anything that we have to know about this reincarnation story as adults? So the father played a huge role in their life and was absolutely passionate. Now this is the Christian. See the Christian? So this would give us information that he was a Christian. However, he still had alternate beliefs. And so this is the father sharing or having an influence on these women with an alternate belief, okay, with an alternate belief from what the church had. And these women, even though they're twins, are night and day. They have a lot of differences in that card. So, wow, the king or the father figure played a major role in their lives. Can you imagine the devastation of losing 2 children and then having them return? Can you imagine what an impact? So I'm not seeing the mother appear here. So what did Florence think of all this? What did Florence think of all of this reincarnation? So Florence really never fully recovered from the loss of her daughters when they were killed in the car accident. She never fully recovered from that. Oh, she finally showed up. And so here's the 2 eggs that she had for twins. And so she was very happy to accept the 2 daughters that she had in her life. Now, because she showed up as the wands here, I believe that there is a level of her that is agreeing with her husband about the reincarnation theory, because she's showing up here as the wands, which is a spiritual card. So I'm going to ask a question. What do we have to know, like you? What do you have to know about the concept of reincarnation? What do you have to know about the concept of reincarnation? Knight of Cups. That's coming back as a person, coming back as another person. The Hermit. This is seeing it from a higher perspective. He's way up on a mountain shining a light. So shining a light on the possibility that this could be real. And look at this. She is half fish and half human. So reincarnation is coming back in a different form. I mean, this card couldn't get any clearer, and we have a faint, what could be a rainbow bridge in the back. A faint card that could be the rainbow bridge in the back. Wow. And sadness here in the loss of one form, and happiness in a new start, in the new form. Not that you're coming back as a fish, but I also did a little bit of numerology on the situation of this reincarnation. So here were the original girls when they were born. I couldn't find their actual dates of birth. I would have loved to have been able to find that. If anybody can, I'll do a second video. But I did the pattern of their name. So I noticed that Joanna had 5-5 in her name, first name, and 33 in her last name. Okay, and she was 11 when she died. 11 and 33 and 55. Now, fives can be upsetting events. When did they die? 5-5, right? And born in 1957, 555. They died on that day. So fives can be upsetting events. Jacqueline had 1-1, right, which ties into 11 of her age. And she also had 5-5 at the end of her name. Passed away at 5-5. So both of them are tied to the number 5-5 and passed away on May 5th. So they came back October 4th. So they're a 4 for their core number, but their personality is the month plus the day, which is 5. So they came back on a 5 and in 1958. They died in 57, came back in 58. Jillian has 2 3s in her name, okay? So Joanna had 2 5s, Jillian has 2 3s, and then a minor 5 at the end. Jennifer has 5-5-5 in her name. 5-5-5-5. She's got 4 5s. So she ties into this strong date of birth here also. So they both came back with duplicate numbers in their name. So which their last name is a double also. I just find the numerology to be absolutely fascinating. They both here have J, which is a 1 for their first name, but here Jillian has a 7, which is spiritual. It's a very spiritual number. So she came back with a different first letter to her name, but they kept with the J on Jennifer. So I just thought the numerology, looking at the pattern, I just thought that this was really fascinating to look at this and this idea of reincarnation. It's an amazing story, and I have to tell you that I believe it. What are your thoughts?